Hi, my name is Suda. I'm 20 years old, and in the last 6 months, my consulting business generated over $126,000. And last month, we did $54,000 to end off the year. And for 2026, it's on pace to generate over $1 million cash collected in revenue. And you're probably thinking I'm working 10 to 12-hour days every single day in the business, but that's just the opposite from what the truth is. I only work 3 to 4 hours every single day, and I have time to go out with friends, try different restaurants, balance hobbies that I have, and still maintain the social life while balancing this $1 million business. I've been able to make more than people's salaries within the month working a tenth of the hours. And today I want to show you exactly how I structure out my day, how I manage all my team members while leveraging out my time so that I can work on the things that will actually move the needle in my business forward. So I'll be walking you through exactly how I allocate my time to make sure that I am fulfilling both roles as a manager and a CEO, how I can actually find leverage by knowing what I need to do, what's urgent, what's not important, and what I can delegate. And finally, how I can scale with structure and intention to make sure that I optimize for things that I like versus not like. Say I don't want to take any sales calls, I'll structure it so I don't take any sales calls. So number one is time allocation. And it's really important that you guys understand that there are two roles that go into play here. There is the role of the CEO, who is the highest leverage and does the things that move the needle forward, and the manager, who helps out the CEO and is in the business still making sure everything's running properly. So I'm going to cover exactly what that looks like. So a CEO is basically super high leverage, and everything that he works on gives him a return on investment and moves the needle forward in the business. So he's doing a bunch of deep work every single day for long hours, but it's not necessarily urgent, but it is extremely important in terms of scaling and growing the business. He has no deep work blocks. It's very urgent that he takes care of all these things, like talking to all the people, but it's not extremely important in terms of moving the needle forward for the business. It's the thing that keeps the business afloat. Okay, so the manager is going to be the exact opposite of the CEO, right? The manager is going to be the one that's doing the tasks that are in the business, keeping the business afloat, making sure all the KPIs are hit, right? While the CEO is like the engine, making sure that the business can go from point A to point B. So the manager is going to be talking to CSMs, and he's going to be managing the sales team, making sure everything is good in the business, and he's the one putting out these fires. So a manager having a full calendar means that he's working properly. He's doing the right things, he's talking to people, and he actually works in the business. So as the owner of the business and trying to scale, you want to be able to manage your business as the CEO and also manage it as a manager. So this is what it looks like. So obviously you're going to be looking at the business from a bigger state of view. For both roles, you're going to make sure that you're handling little fires in the business, just talking with the team, see how they're doing, have a little temperature check in for the KPIs, make sure that they're doing their work properly. What that looks like is the CEO might be talking to the manager or the sales manager, while the manager is just going to be in there as well, talking to the closers. So here's where you're going to be talking to clients, right? You can just check in with the team, see how they're doing. And then after that, this is where it separates apart. So the CEO is going to be making sure that from 12 to 8, what he's going to be doing is he's just going to be going to the gym, lunch, and then what I'll do there is I'm going to go to the gym, and at my gym, there's a big work lounge that you can just sit at and work all day. And that's where I'm just going to get an entire huge deep work session where I'm working on the biggest problems in my business, right? I'm fixing KPIs. Why are my KPIs being hit? Like what's happening with the show up rate? Is the show up rate because there's a number that's being broken, or maybe it's the setter's fault? Maybe the closers are doing a good enough job at nurturing. Maybe the sales manager isn't doing a proper job. So it's about building SOPs, making sure that they're in check, or building systems that are going to be able to help them maybe nurture better so that the show up rate can be improved. So this is also where I'm going to be building back-end systems, like I just mentioned. For example, if there's something that is really going to help out clients, I'm going to start building these back-end systems, such as like automations that they need. Maybe the closers might want an automation that's going to ping them whenever a lead is booked, right? But maybe they want an automation where they're going to be building, or maybe the setter comes to us and tells us that like, hey, they want an automation where the setter takes notes, and when they book the appointment, all those notes go straight to the closer rather than the setter have to manually tell the closer everything. And then finally, building these fulfillment systems. So, at the gym, I'll just be making sure that all the fulfillment is good on my client's end. Maybe I'll build out SOPs that are going to be important, such as how to close better, how to make sure that your ads are running even better, how to optimize properly, and basically make different instructions and educational videos for my clients to make sure that they're getting the best results possible. I have the option to work from 12 to 8, but I'll be finished with all my problems. I'll be fixing all the KPIs, and it's only realistically like 3 hours where I'm going to be going into the back end, fixing automations, maybe adding different automations that my team wants, and building out these SOPs and sending them over to my clients. So now every Tuesday and Thursday is where I take the role as a manager. And this is where I'm going to be talking directly to my closers and setters and managers and CSMs. So I'm going to wake up, right? Same thing as before. I'm just going to work on content. And then I'm going to handle fires in the business and check for KPIs, just have the temp check. But then I'm going to go to the gym and lunch, and then I'm going to come back. And all I'll do after that is I'm just going to have coaching calls with my clients. I'm going to have sales team calls where I'm going to review calls with my closers, or I'm going to talk to my manager about how he's currently managing how the closers are. I'll be doing onboarding calls here. I'll have team calls here as well, just to make sure that everybody, the closers and setters are happy, the managers are happy, the CSMs are happy, right? Just make sure and get them hyped up for the week to come. And then basically all these calls are just going to be stacked back to back to back. And just to make sure that I'm talking to every single person in the business and kind of having a better understanding. And 2 through 8, that's basically where I'm going to be stacked back to back to back. I'm just going to be talking to as many people as possible, whether it's the closers, setters, managers, CSMs, or maybe even my clients back to back. And Wednesdays, they practically look empty because I'm just going to be going in the business, kind of handling a little fires, temp check on the team, talking to my team, making sure that, everything's good. I don't have to step in if anything, it does happen. And 12 through 8 is where I'm going to be working on the biggest problems in the business and trying to build out systems that will help us scale to the next level. And then after 8 p.m. is kind of where I just chill. So this is what it looks like in terms of like my calendar. So number 2, finding leverage. Like you want to understand where you want to leverage yourself, because if you don't leverage yourself, you're going to end up just working in the business, right? So you want to ask the question, is like, hey, what do you like doing? What don't you like doing? And money aside, what would you do? So there's this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the topics is where they talk about this thing called the Eisenhower matrix. And essentially what the Eisenhower matrix is a time management table to help you discern what is important and what is not important. So basically you'll be able to understand what needs to get done right now, what needs to get done later, and what is not that important but needs to get done now, which you can delegate or just not do at all. So basically, it breaks down into a table like this. It's broken down into not important and important, right? So if it's urgent, this means that you need to do it now. If it's not urgent, you can kind of schedule it out for later. So important means that it's going to help grow the business, right? Not important means that it's not necessarily going to help grow the business, but it's going to help keep it afloat. So an example of something that is important and urgent is sales calls. Sales calls, whenever someone hops on a call and helps them make an educated decision and they decide to sign on, they're going to pay you, and which is inherently growing the business. It's urgent because they're waiting in the Zoom call, they're waiting for someone to hop on, someone to talk to see, if this is something that could help them. And important as in, if you can help them come to that decision that, this is a good fit, they pay you, which is essentially growing the business. So it's important and urgent. So this is where you're going to have managers, closers, and setters at, so you can leverage yourself. So an example of something that's not urgent but is important is where the leader is going to come in, where he's going to have these long, deep work blocks working on the things that will grow the business over in the long run. So an example of this is building SOPs, building different frameworks, working on course videos, working on content, things that aren't necessarily going to give you an instant gratification where you see a payment hit, but over the long run, it's going to make sure that you get from point A to point B with your business in terms of revenue. So you're working on the things that will take your business from 10K a month to 100K a month. So something that is urgent but not important is where you want to essentially just delegate yourself. So I know it says editors, managers, closers. Don't worry about that. This is essentially where you're just going to get a virtual assistant overseas and you're going to hire them to do something that is not important to the business, but it's something that needs to get done right now. So an example of that is recently I did not have my B-rolls and my clips organized, the ones that I recorded, and I really needed to get all of that organized. So I just hired someone overseas to just organize them for me. So it was something that I needed to do. Like, I couldn't find any of my clips, but it was really like, it wasn't really that important, but it was urgent because I wanted to find that clip. So I just asked someone else to do it. And then finally, not urgent and not important, just don't do it. It's just as simple as that. Just don't do it. If it's not going to grow the business and it's not urgent, there's no reason to put any effort or time into it. So that's what the Eisenhower matrix is, right? Leaders stop reacting and they actually find the real priorities and what to do. They understand what's important for the business and they understand what is urgent as well. So what needs to get done now and what's going to actually help the business grow. So moving on, what the Pareto principle is, which I'm going to cover, is something known as the 80-20 rule. What the 80-20 rule is essentially where 20% of the effort that you put into the business leads to 80% of the results. And 80% of the effort that you put in also leads into only 20% of the results. So as a leader, you want to be putting 20% of your effort so that you can get 80% of the results. And then the other 80% of the effort that you put in or is put into the business, that is the people that you have hired under you. So for example, if you're a leader or a manager role and you're still editing every single day, your solution is to hire an editor, right? You don't want to be putting 80% of your effort only to get 20% of the result. So let's say you're in a manager role and you're taking too many calls and you can't reply to any of your team members or you can't reply to any of your clients. Your solution there is to hire a CSM, which is a customer success manager. Let's say you're a leader or manager and maybe you have too many DMs coming in from the content, right? Your solution is to hire a DM setter. So essentially what you want to do is, it works in very well with the Eisenhower matrix because now you understand what is the 20% that you need to be working on, what is the thing that is most important to the business, and then what is urgent and what is not urgent. This is going to help you understand what that 20% is going to be so you can put your 100% into that little 20% pie so you can get 80% of the result that you want. Right? And then the other 80% of the effort is something that you delegate to other people. Like must hires for setters. So here are the things that you really need to hire out for scaling. You need an editor because if you're going to have videos coming out, if you're going to be recording videos every single day, you need an editor. You can't be spending hours on hours just editing videos on your own. Number two, you also need a setter. So a DM setter or someone to call your leads. Right? You can have a hybrid closer do it, but it's really important that you have somebody to follow up with all of these leads that are coming in. Right? If nobody's touching all of these leads, then you're not going to get any business at all. So as an owner of the business, you want to make sure that you're not on the phone every single day and you're dialing leads, because that falls under the 80% effort. Right? You want to make sure that you're actually doing the 20% effort. So essentially all of these, they fall under the 80% effort. So you don't want to be doing that. So lastly, it's a VA. Like I mentioned earlier, you can sort all of your B-roll and make sure everything's organized. And finally, for number 3, you want to be scaling with structure and intention. So this is you, right? Once you figure out what is important, what is not urgent, and what is urgent into your business, like what's going to make you go from A to B with your business and what's going to keep it afloat, you're going to realize that it comes down to hiring the right people. So you want to make sure that they speak fluent English, and then they're on 5% commission on cash collected. And the reason why they're on 5% commission cash collected is because they're rewarded based on how much effort that they put in. And it's the same with the closers, right? So you want to make sure they're US based, fluent in English, and they are rewarded based on how their performance is. So it's 8 to 12% on cash collected. So with fulfillment, a customer success manager, you're going to give these guys a base salary per month per client. And they're also going to get 10% of our rev share from our client as well. So we get 10% rev share as well. So they get 10% of that 10%. So essentially, if you have 20 clients, they're going to be making $4,000 a month. Right? If you have 35 clients, they're going to be making $7,000 a month. And that's $7,000 a month from just talking to all of your clients and making sure that they're happy, making sure all of their questions are answered, leading them to the right resources, and making sure that they're booking in calls, they're coming onto the group recordings, and basically taking in all feedback from the clients so that you can actually work to grow the business and build out SOPs that your clients might have. So there's going to be rev share bonuses for the CSM as well. So every time a client hits $10,000 a month or $25,000 a month, they'll get $100 to $200 per client. So basically what that is going to look like is, like, with the base and on top of rev share, they're going to be making a good base for 20 clients. And then depending on how good that their service is, how good they can answer questions, if the client is able to scale to 10K a month, for example, they're going to be making 2 to 40K. They're going to be making 2 to 40K every single month. So that's how the payment is going to look like for our closers, appointment setters, and CSMs. So like I mentioned, we're trying to scale with structure and intention, right? So we want to optimize for what you like versus don't like. So this diagram is essentially what you don't want to be doing. So as the leader of the business, you want to make sure that you do not have a full sales calendar. You do not have any responsibility with nurturing or setting all of these leads that are coming in. And on top of the full sales calendar with setting and nurturing leads, you want to make sure that you're not having to deal with a bunch of clients under you. So while this is going to lead to low costs, it's going to mean super long work hours for you because you're going to have a full sales calendar. You're going to be setting, nurturing leads every single day, and you're going to be having to deal with mad clients because you're so busy you can't reply to them every single day. And you're just going to be super stressed. So this is what it's going to look like, right? A bunch of mad clients. You're stressed every single day. You're working 10 to 12 hours every single day. So this is what you want your structure to look like to make sure that your work hours are low. You're working maybe only like 2 to 4 hours every single day. Your stress is low every single day. You don't have to worry about putting out all of these fires in the business, and you're not dealing with any mad clients. You only have a bunch of happy clients. So to make sure that you're delegating properly, you want to have a sales manager taking care of the closers and setters, right? So instead of having to worry about setting and nurturing leads, you're going to have a setter basically take all of that responsibility. So they're going to be nurturing, emailing, calling, qualifying, DMing maybe, right? And the sales manager is going to keep them in check. So like I said earlier, when you have a full sales calendar, you're not going to have to worry about that anymore because you're going to have a closer on your behalf, right? That is checked and managed by the sales managers that you have. So whenever you have a full sales calendar, the closer is going to be the one calling, qualifying, nurturing, and closing all of these deals. And finally, to make sure that all of your clients are happy, they're taken care of, they're always being nurtured, they're always being talked to, and they're always being held accountable, you're going to have customer success managers making sure that when you do have a bunch of closes coming in from the closer, right, all of these clients are being taken care of, and you're able to properly work on the business here because you're going to have CSMs taking care of all of your clients here while you're working on the things that truly matter to the business. So when your closer is making a bunch of sales, you don't have to worry about a bunch of clients that you're going to have to take care of because you're going to have CSMs making sure that they're all kept in check. They're all super happy. They're all being talked to. They're all being nurtured and held accountable. Because as the CEO, you want to make sure that all of your effort goes into that 20% in the Pareto's principle, like I mentioned, right? Which is what's going to actually grow the business. So this is the exact structure on exactly how to scale and structure with intention. So just to sum it all up, you want to be allocating your time properly into two roles, which is the CEO role and the manager role, right? So as the CEO, you have a lot of leverage on the business. On the manager, your time is currency. So number 2, finding leverage. Figure out what's important to the business, what's actually going to help it grow, what needs to be done now and what needs to be done later. And then finally, you have the structure to scale with intention. So when you do understand what's important to grow the business and what isn't important, you can do later on and schedule out. So finally, number 3, scale with structure and intention. So when you do understand what is important, not important, urgent, and not urgent from the Eisenhower matrix, you have the structure to delegate yourself here. So I hope all of that helped. This is the exact structure that I'm using to work 3 to 4 hours every single day while still growing my business past that 54K a month mark. If you guys have any other questions or want to talk to me, just send a DM over in my Instagram that I'll link down in my bio. And other than that, have a good day.